We're now going to have the time for all ages. And this is a story of a place. And it's a place that was very calm and peaceful. But the people there didn't have a lot of decisions to make, because if they ever wanted to know what to do, they just looked up at this mountain and the answer was there. And the name of the town was Answer Mountain. And what happened was, when they looked up, they would see the mountain and said, the answer is no. Quite straightforward. And so, Ma Perkins, she was one of the older members of the community, and she had a family, and she was cooking food. She said, well, what should I give my family for dinner tonight? She thought, I'll give them liver. Everyone likes liver. No? Anyone like liver? Yay! I won't invite you for haggis, those of you who don't like it. So said, I think I'll give my family liver, but she's got a large family, and you can imagine when she brought out liver, everyone just went, oh no, not liver. She said, oh. So the next night she said, well, what should I give them? I was thinking of giving them liver again, but they didn't seem to like it very much. And so she said, she went, let me see what the mountain says, and said, can I give them chicken? And the mountain said, the answer is no. How about fish? The answer is no. She goes, this is not very helpful. And so she gave them liver again, and you can imagine, even those of us who like liver, 2 nights in a row is a bit much. So she said, this is not fair. I'm going to call a town council meeting. I said, so she called a town council meeting and said, I'm Ma Perkins, I've been a resident here all my life. It's not good enough having the answer always being no. We need to have yes sometimes. And they all talked about it and said, that's a good idea. Let's have the answer is yes. So the stone cutter who was there said, well, I can go up there tomorrow and chisel out the new answer into the mountain that the answer is yes. So he went up there and did it, and he completed it within the day. Then the next day, Ma Perkins was thinking, what am I going to have for dinner? I don't know whether to have chicken or fish. Let me see what the mountain says. He said, should I have chicken or fish? And the answer is yes. Well, I can't do that. This is not going to work. And then everyone who had any question would look at the answer, and it said, the answer is yes. So there was just chaos, because no one was not doing anything. Everyone was doing whatever they wanted. So there was just absolute anarchy. So that didn't work. So Ma Perkins called another meeting and said, look, the answer is no doesn't work. The answer is yes doesn't work. We need to have something like the answer needs to be dependent on the context and the situation and who's involved and all of this. And the council said, that's true. And the stone cutter said, well, I can do that, but it'll take me more than a day. And he said, well, let's go ahead and get started. So he went up the first day and he walked away. Second day he went up a little bit later because he was tired, walked away. The third day he kind of took it off. The fourth day he did a little, and then he eventually just stopped. But what people noticed while they were waiting, if they weren't sure what to do, they would make up their own minds, or they'd ask the neighbour, what do you think I should do today? Or would you like some of my extra liver that I have? You can give it to your family. And so they started communicating more with each other and not just relying on it. And then they never really noticed that they didn't need the mountain anymore. But when they did look up at the mountain, there was this temporary sign that said, the answer is under construction. And I think that's a great model for our Unitarian Universalism, that we're always looking for new answer to these questions. There's no such thing as a fundamental yes or fundamental no. Life is a lot more complex than that. And so that's why we always try and practice when we're not sure about something. Let's always approach it with curiosity rather than judgment.
When I was in college, going to improv theater was popular. I think it was a cheap date. The suggestions thrown out by drunk college students are not actually stellar, and so I didn't enjoy too many of the skits. But I really enjoyed thinking about the creativity and the courage of the actors. And most of all, I like the basic premise of improv, which is just 2 words. Does anybody know them? Yes, and, exactly. Yes, I will take whatever you throw at me, and I will expand upon it, maybe improve upon it. So back then, it occurred to me that yes and might be a good way to approach life. Yes, I'll listen to your ideas, and I'll have ideas of my own. Yes, I'll figure out what you like, and I'll figure out what I like. But over the years, I forgot about yes and life went on with all of its, well, with all of the good and the bad. Being an optimistic person, I have a tendency to sometimes sugarcoat or move on quickly from the bad or try to find a different focus. And I know I have that tendency. It came up again recently when I was taking a spiritual autobiography writing class from Beth Harrison, which, by the way, she's been teaching for, I think, almost 2 decades, and it is excellent. But it was also sometimes painful. It was painful for me to revisit my past. I don't really like thinking about the hurtful and the people in my life that have hurt me. But then I thought again about yes and it occurred to me that it worked even better for the painful parts of life. Because yes, it is great to be optimistic, it is great to be grateful, and we all know for our mental health, we really have to address the pain. So as I was writing, I would think to myself about something that really hurt, and I would write about the regrets, the sorrow, the anger, sometimes even the shame. And I would really reflect upon that before I would then say, and this also happened to me, and go back to the gratitude. So I want to give you one really, really important example to me. 6 years ago, I moved to the peninsula after a family tragedy, and it was a very difficult move. I lost a home I loved, and rolling hills with hiking trails I loved, and bridge buddies and golfing friends, and I lost my best friend, which still is very painful, and I even lost a husband of 45 years along the way. And it was a very, very hard time. And I got to move closer to my daughter and my grandkids, which is a joy. And I found new hiking buddies and new golf friends, and I learned about Half Moon Bay, I learned about Pulgus Ridge. But completely unexpectedly, I learned about you. I was on a hike with Carolyn Cheney, some of you know her, and she said to me, well, if you want to meet new people, you should go to church. And I laughed and I said, sure, you've got a church for agnostics and atheists, I'm there. And she said, I do. Come with me this Sunday. And it felt like a dare. And I did. And I loved it, and I've never left. This fellowship has made a huge difference to me emotionally, spiritually, intellectually. It has given me space to grow, to learn, to laugh, to be silly, and to cry. I'm about to cry. You guys give me love. You fill me with joy. And I really want to say thank you.
What religion are you? I looked at my questioner, took a deep breath. I said, I'm a Unitarian Universalist. My questioner was brief and to the point. Never heard of it. Is that a real religion? In my less gracious moments, I want to say, no, I just made it up. But if I was going to make it up, I would choose a better name than Unitarian Universalist. I notice it's about the second syllable of Universalist that people stop pretending to be interested. And a friend of mine was checking into the hospital, and the nurse asked her, what religion are you? And she said, I'm a Unitarian Universalist. And the nurse just looked at her blankly and said, I'll put down other. And I insisted that we don't let them do that. Make them put down the full name, Unitarian Universalists, because we have to put up with all the medical terms for us that we don't understand. So that can be revenge in the medical establishment. But revenge is a poor spiritual motive. But there are times in our history we have been glad to be the other religion. Reverend Laurel Hallman, who was for many years the minister of the First Unitarian Church of Dallas, she talks about in the 1950s, the First Unitarian Church of Dallas was listed under other in the phone book. The other two categories were white and colored. White and colored, because we were welcoming and inclusive of all races, regardless of color of the skin. So there have been times we've been pleased to be the other religion. But it is a little bit frustrating when people don't know about Unitarian Universalism, because it's a religion that is very important to me and has been for many years and important to many in this room. But we are a small religion, and it's frustrating that people don't know about us. But I haven't always had a strong religious identity. When I was 14, I grew up Presbyterian, but when I was 14, I chose my spiritual path in the soccer fields in Scotland. And given Scottish weather, that is actually a poor choice. It shows you how much I wanted to get away from church. But for me, growing up in the west of Scotland with the Protestant Catholic bigotry in the 1970s, which was inflamed by the Northern Ireland troubles, so we just had the anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement. With those troubles, there was so much religious bigotry. I just saw religion as this form of division. I never saw religion bringing people together. And so I saw no purpose in it. But I did become, like many people in college, I became interested in Buddhism, and then in my 20s, I explored the Baha'i faith, and I was interested in religious philosophy, but not the Christianity of my upbringing. But I never thought I'd never find a religious path for me until an event that happened to one of my closest friends. Jim was a person who grew up in the same town I did, but he was Catholic. So we had different public schools, Catholic public schools, and what were called non-denominational public schools in Scotland. But it was so non-denominational, we said the Lord's Prayer every day. I think it's improved now, that it is non-denominational and welcoming of all religious backgrounds. But so we never met till we were in college, but we both studied physics in college. And while we were there, we became really close friends. I became very close friends with many of his friends, including his wife, Christine. And then I'd moved to the States, but we still kept in touch. He would come over and visit me, and I would see him when I went back. And then I got a phone call in my office one day, and it was Jim, which was kind of surprising because it was during the week. And he told me he'd just got out of hospital, and that he'd been in a car crash coming back from his sister's wedding, and Christine was killed in the car crash. And Jim was stuck in the car with her for an hour next to her dead body. And I was devastated. So when I heard this, he just got out of hospital. I flew back a couple of days later and was with him. And I didn't know what I was going to do, but I needed to be with my friend at that time. And we met, and we cried, and we talked about Christine, and we talked about the past, and we talked about what he was going to do in the future. And through that time, I was there for a couple of weeks, Jim decided he was going to come over and visit me. I was in San Diego at the time in California. He would come over and visit with me and stay with me. And I noticed when I was talking to him that his Catholic faith gave him so much strength to deal with that. He had a community to support him, but he had a faith that allowed him to deal with that most tragic events I think any person could experience, the loss of one of the people you loved most in the world. I remember we came driving up to San Francisco from San Diego, and we were camping one night in Big Sur, and we were talking around the campfire, and Jim said something to me, and I can picture him right now in the campfire, where he said, I know you don't believe this, Brian, but I know I will see Christine again. I will see Christine again. And I remember listening to him saying that, and he's right, I didn't believe him. But boy, I wanted to believe him. And boy, did I wish I had this faith. Because I don't think I have the faith to handle a situation like that, because I wasn't involved in a religious community. So I think that was a moment for me where I said, I need to find a religious community. I need to get grounded in what are my values, what will carry me through the tough times, what will help me celebrate the good times. And that time was when I began my search for a religious community that I eventually found at the First Unitarian Universalist Church Society of San Francisco. It was a few years later, it didn't happen immediately, but that set me in that path. I wanted a faith like that. Now, Jim's theology is not mine, and we've talked about this often, but that was the moment I wanted a faith like that. Because I really saw how dealing with one of the hardest things, Jim's faith got him through that. And we're still good friends. I see him every time I'm back. He's got a new wife and a new family with 3 daughters now, and we're still close friends. And I saw that possibility of recovering from one of the hardest things anyone could ever experience. But religion is more than just facing these extreme times of sadness, these extreme tragedies in our life. Religion's also about living a more meaningful and purposeful life. And Jim already had that when Christine died, and having a meaning and purpose in his life helped him get through that tragedy as well. And ultimately for me is having values that are life-affirming, life-enhancing, and perhaps even life-saving, which are the values I get from Unitarian Universalism. The Unitarian minister, A. Powell Davis, who was minister in Washington, D.C. in the 1940s and 50s, says this. He says, "Let me tell you why I come to church. Because I fall below my own standards and need to be constantly brought back to them. I am afraid of becoming selfish and indulgent, and my church of the free spirit, brings me back to what I want to be. I could easily despair. Doubt and dismay could overwhelm me. My church renews my courage and hope. It's not enough that I should think about the world and its problems at the level of a newspaper report or a magazine discussion. It could too soon become too low a level. I must have my conscience sharpened until it goads me to the most thorough and responsible thinking of which I am capable. I must feel again that love I owe to others. I must not only hear about it, but feel it. In church I do. I am brought towards my best in every way, brought towards my best." Those are the words of A. Powell Davis. And I think a religious, spiritual identity in this 21st century is still important, because so many of us are concerned about the overemphasis in individualism, the overemphasis in the excessive material wealth, and just the pervasive injustice, including the injustice towards our planet. And to address those, we need to seek deeper human connections, find a search for meaning and purpose beyond materialism, and work for greater justice. And I think one of the challenges we have as Unitarian Universalists is we're trying to expand what religion is. We're trying to expand it beyond the simple idea of worshipping God, especially the idea of a supernatural God. Because I don't think, do you believe in God, is the most meaningful question. That might sound strange coming from a minister, but I don't think you can answer it. You can't answer it meaningfully. If you say yes, are you saying yes to the theistic Christian God? Are you saying yes to the 7 deities of Hinduism? Are you saying yes to Gaia, the soul of the earth? If you say no, are you denying the experience of wonder, mystery, awe, the experience of God as love, which is meaningful to me? So I don't think, do you believe in God, is a useful question. And as many in this congregation know, I've replaced that with 2 questions that are more meaningful to me. It's like, what do you love and inspires you to live life fully, and what breaks your heart and calls you to action. What do you love and what breaks your heart? I think those are richer questions for spiritual exploration. Because religion needs to be something beyond belief in the unbelievable. It needs to inspire us every day. It's not about coming to church on a Sunday. Religion should inspire us every day to live more into those values of love, compassion, and justice that ground us, that make life meaningful and purposeful. And religion needs to, in my opinion, move beyond the supernatural. We are believers in science. We are believers in reason. It's often said there's 4 sources of religious meaning in life. There's scripture, tradition, reason, and experience. And different religions emphasize those to different amounts. But in Unitarian Universalism, our emphasis is the use of reason to interpret our lived experience. Of course, the Catholic Church, there's a tradition there, biblical-based Christianity, there's scripture, so different things. And every religion uses different amounts of those, but we focus on our lived experience. The lived experience of myself, the lived experience of everyone here, the lived experience of my friend Jim through the death of his wife. Each of those is sources for meaning for each of us. In New Jersey, African-American Senator Cory Booker says, "Before you speak to me about your religion, first show it to me in how you treat other people. Before you tell me how much you love God, show me in how much you love all his children. Before you preach to me of your passion for your faith, teach me about it through the compassion for your neighbors. In the end, I'm not interested in what you have to tell or sell, as in how you choose to live and give." Those are the words of U.S. New Jersey Senator Cory Booker. And I find it sad when I look around our world that religion seems to be more known for what it hates than for what it loves. You see what's happening throughout the country towards transgender youth, often driven by people with religious beliefs. It's absolutely heartbreaking. That breaks my heart, looking at how one of the most vulnerable groups we have in our community, transgender youth, are being abused by religion and our political leaders. And it's something that happened to the LGBT community before. That breaks my heart. We're called to do better. Religion needs to be known for what it loves and not what it hates. Not what it discriminates against, but what it connects with and embraces. Our Universalist tradition calls us to put the love of all humanity at the center of our religion, the love of all humanity at the center of our... It's not putting humanity at the center, it's a love of humanity we put towards our center. I often wonder, is love enough? We look at the injustice to the world, we look at the antipathy between different groups in our country, the divisions in our political party. And when we see the fuss that's going on about a transgender activist doing an ad for Bud Light and people are boycotting it, is that what we've come to in this society? Is love enough? I have to believe it is, but what do we mean? What love is enough to transcend these boundaries that we have? Now, one of the problems we have when we use the word love is English is inadequate. Greek had 4 words for love. I suspect the Italians probably have 100, I don't know. The French probably the same. But when I'm talking about love, I'm talking about agape love, the love of humanity. This is what Martin Luther King talked about. And agape's love is about responding calmly when faced with difficulty, sacrificing without complaining, and responding with curiosity rather than judgment when challenged or experiencing the unexpected. But I know as an individual, I can't unconditionally love continuously. That's why we have community. Because I believe a community can unconditionally love continuously. Because each of us we are finite creatures with finite limitations. That's why we need to be in religious community, so that we can manifest unconditional love continuously beyond what any one of us can do by ourselves. And that love of all humanity, which I'm called to do, is fundamental to my identity as a Unitarian Universalist. And it's not easy. Not everyone is obviously lovable. I'm not always lovable. I didn't hear any shock about that. But we are called to love the unlovable. There's no boundaries on love. As a community, we do that. Now, as I've said before, we hold everyone in love, but some we hold further away than others. And of course, love does not mean you like someone. What love means, what agape love means, is you know they're worthy of dignity and respect. Everyone knows that we disagree with, as are those transgender youth in Texas that are getting denied medical treatment, as parents are getting arrested for trying to do the best with what they believe for their children. That is not loving, that is hateful. And I think what we do as part of my Unitarian Universalist identity, I raise the human relationships, the love I have for each one of you, to the value of ultimate meaning and purpose in my life. We raise our relationships. That's why, whether we believe, we may have different beliefs about God, but we share the values of holding our relationships with each one of the people in this room to the ultimate value in this community. And the Unitarian Universalist religious thinker Sharon Welsh says the divine is that relational power which gives us a capacity for right relations with others, with nature, and with ourselves. And I think a spiritual religious identity refers to the quality of the relationships we have with one another. And we make promises and commitments to one another in Unitarian Universalists through covenant. A two-way promise with one another, how we wish to be with each other. And much of that is aspirational, because as Martin Buber, the Jewish philosopher, said, we are promise-making, promise-breaking, promise-renewing people. But we covenant to come back into relationship with one another. And our Unitarian Universalist identity challenges us in other ways, because it asks us to hold contradictory elements together as one. Many of us come to Unitarian Universalism because we value religious freedom. But we also want to be in religious community, and to be in community means that you need to curtail and sacrifice some of your freedoms. So there's a tension there. Because if you want to be a radical individual out in the world, it's easy, but society calls us to put limits on us. I can't drive 70 miles an hour in a 25-mile limit. Well, I can, but it's not for very long. But we are called to make sacrifices, to be in community. And so that's a tension, because we have this radical individualistic streak in Unitarian Universalism as a homegrown American religion. It's got that radical individualism, and now we're trying to figure out, how do we have that religious freedom, that spiritual freedom, and be in community? And I think it's because we are a community of shared values and differing beliefs. But we also have this idea in our Unitarian Universalist tradition of the potential goodness of human beings. But you can look at the world today, or you look at the world of history, there's a lot of contradictory evidence against that. But I emphasize it's a potential goodness. And we acknowledge that there has been horrendous crimes committed throughout history. There's wars now in Sudan, we've got the war going on in Ukraine, we see another mass shooting in Alabama last night. The world is tragic. Yet, the great hope is the potential for a better world, the potential for beloved community, and the call for each of us to work towards that. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, the great Russian author, used to say that the line between good and evil does not run between different political parties, not between states, not to be between different classes, between the center of every human heart. The line between good and evil. And I think we have to acknowledge that as Unitarian Universalists, that we are all capable of great good. We're also capable of maybe not evil, maybe that's too strong, but meanness or selfishness or greed that causes great harm in our world. And we're also a life-affirming and hopeful religion. And we do that while facing the real realities of all the hardships of the world. So we hold these three contradictory things in tension: the individualism versus being in community, the working for justice and being hopeful, working for justice while realizing the great harm in the world, and the potential of human good, despite the great potential for human harm. We live with the aspiration and profound belief that we need to be co-creators in making the world a better place for all people. We wrestle with making meaning about our lived experience, even with the tragedies of the world. It's not an easy religion. So being part of this Unitarian Universalist community is a choice. It's a choice that not involves signing a list of beliefs, but rather a promise engaging our hearts, our minds, our spirit, and our body in a deeper relationship with one another. It's making the difficult choice to love each other even after wrongdoing, violated trust, or even hurt. We choose loving engagement over fearful withdrawal by emotionally walking towards one another, not walking away when things get hard. This is religion, and what my UU identity means to me. We have religion when we grow in our personal understanding and find greater meaning in our life. We have religion when we seek justice and care for others in a relationship of equity, love, and compassion. We have religion when we recognize our planet and all life as meriting our care and respect. And we have religion when we do all we can to follow a life that's larger than any one of us and live that life to our highest ideals of love, compassion, and justice.